Imagine a world where a princess of some kingdom in her previous life tricks her soon-to-be husband into a slave by signing a contract of fealty instead of a contract of subordination, giving her absolute control over his every action. Later on, even forces him into killing his mother, and when he tries to retaliate by killing her, she calls him a fool by saying he can't kill her because of the contract of fealty, and laughs at him. She even mocks the deaths of her knights, saying she can always recruit new knights. But that soon changes, after she turns into a savior from an evil villainess. I welcome you to my channel Anitales Recap, and today we'll recap some of the episodes of the anime, the most heretical last boss queen from villainess to savior. If you like this show and want me to keep bringing this anime every week, leave a comment and a like to let me know. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the channel as it helps me a lot and keeps me motivated for making more anime recaps. Let's start.
The story begins with a girl who rushes home to play her favorite video game when suddenly TruckCon appears and she gets run over. She finds herself in the body of a princess, immediately collapsing on the floor as the servants panic, scrambling to find help, and we learn she has been reincarnated into the game as the evil Princess Pride, who serves as the final boss. Her character's role is to cause the downfall of the country in 10 years' time, committing atrocities until the protagonist puts an end to her reign of terror. As she lies on her bed, her father, the Prince Consort Albert, enters the room, checking up on her, telling her that her mother is worried about her. Her mother is named Rosa, and she serves as the most powerful leader in her country. Pride hardly ever meets her because she is occupied with her duties as the queen, but she knows that there is another reason. She asks Albert about her younger sister, knowing her sister is the protagonist named Tiara. He wonders how she found out about this, and he suspects that she has the power of precognition, which is the same power that Rosa has. Because of this, he starts seeing her as the genuine crown princess, but Pride knows that this is not how the scene is supposed to go. Albert tells her to get some rest as he leaves the room, and Pride remembers that the people in the kingdom can be born with special abilities. The power of precognition is one of the most valuable abilities, and it is fit for a monarch, so those who possess that ability are chosen to succeed the throne. Even in the game, her character displays that ability by correctly guessing that she has a sister, making her a worthy successor to the throne. However, Pride knows that her situation is different because she knows that, as the game's final boss, she is going to get convicted and die in the end. She knows there is a bad ending where either Tiara or her love interest dies, but she doesn't want to force this ending because she knows that Tiara and her love interest are good people, while her character is pure evil. At that moment, she remembers something and she quickly gets off her bed, asking the maids about her father. The maids tell her that he left to report to the queen, and she opens the window, calling out to Albert as she hops on the window ledge. The maids try to stop her, but she tells them not to interfere. Pride tells Albert not to ride the carriage, saying it has a broken wheel which will cause an accident, and there is suddenly a strong gust of wind which causes her to fall, but a servant grabs onto her, saving her in the nick of time. The maids immediately bow their heads as they beg for forgiveness, and this makes Pride remember that her character punished the maids and even gave them the death penalty. This causes her to cry as she apologizes to the maids, causing them to be shocked. Albert enters the room, asking her if the servants did something to her, but she says she's the one at fault, telling him not to punish the servants. Later that day, Albert tells her that she will meet Tiara on her 6th birthday, and he needs to adopt a younger brother to act as an assistant. The next day, as she walks around the castle, the servants talk about how she has changed as a person, as she thinks about denying everything because she is nothing like the Pride in the game. She thinks about how both of her parents are still alive because, in the game, they are supposed to be dead at that point in the story, so she thinks she can change the story in that world. Albert introduces her to her younger brother-in-law named Stale, who is one of her love interests in the game, saying he will act as her assistant. Stale has a teleportation ability, and he's wearing handcuffs to suppress this because he tried to run away multiple times. Albert tells her that Stale will enter a contract of subordination with her tomorrow so that the handcuffs will no longer be necessary. Pride remembers how her character tricked Stale into signing a contract of fealty instead of a contract of subordination, and this gave her absolute control over Stale, making him her slave. This makes her worry that they are just following the storyline, thinking she can't change the story. That evening, she goes to Stale's room, asking him if he wants to see his mother. Stale becomes emotional as Pride shows him the key to his handcuffs, which she secretly took from Albert's desk. Pride is about to remove his handcuffs, but Stale tells her that he and his mother would receive punishment if he escapes from the castle. Stale explains that after the official notice, he only had 2 weeks to stay with his mother before he was sent to the castle, and he was crying on the day they parted, but he was able to give her a proper goodbye. He is afraid that another kid would replace him if he escapes, saying he doesn't want anyone to suffer the same fate as him, so he'll just forget about his mother and serve her. Pride thinks that Stale is a good boy, and she remembers how her character manipulated him into killing his own mother, so she becomes emotional, telling him to sleep well as she walks away. The following day, they sign the contract, and Stale's handcuffs are removed as Albert welcomes him to the family. Stale tells Pride that he is looking forward to being at her side, saying he will protect her as he addresses her as the princess. Pride tells him not to be so formal since they are family now, but her father's assistant, Chancellor Gilbert, goes to them, advising Stale to address her formally in front of others, as he tells Pride that she has become a fine vessel for a queen, knowing about her precognition ability. Pride takes Stale around the house, showing him the library, and she tells him to use it whenever he wishes. She later sees him holding onto some books, but he suddenly falls to the ground as he starts breathing heavily. Stale catches a cold, and he starts crying as he remembers his mother. Pride realizes that he's been through a lot, and he even worked to study the way of life in the castle. She thinks about how cruel her character was to Stale, so she starts crying. Stale asks her what's wrong, and Pride hugs him, as she apologizes for not being able to help him because she wants him to be with his mother. She promises not to hurt him, wanting to make everyone smile, and she tells Stale to kill her if she becomes a deplorable queen. Pride ends up sleeping in his room as Stale thinks about protecting her. We see a scene in the game where Stale tried to kill Pride after he was forced to kill his mother. Pride calls him a fool, saying he can't kill her because he signed the contract of fealty. Stale asks her what his mother did to deserve this, but Pride says she did nothing, and she only wanted to see him kill his own mother for fun. Stale wants to die, but Pride gives him an order telling him he can't take his own life. He falls to his knees as Pride laughs at him, and he becomes determined to have his revenge. Back in their world, Stale wakes up saying he had a dream, but he can't remember what it was. As he prepares for his next lecture, he realizes that he brought Pride's handkerchief with him. He remembers the moment he shared with her, and he recalls when his mother received the official notice. His mother cried after receiving it, saying she doesn't need the money, as she begged them not to take Stale. Before they parted ways, his mother displayed an expression which is similar to what he saw in Pride. Stale reveals that he heard about Pride's naive attitude, so he thought about manipulating her, knowing she would become queen. With this plan in mind, he did everything he could to become the ideal assistant and an exemplary regent, thinking he can change the country's rules if he came in her favor. But he remembers how Pride told him to kill her if she becomes a deplorable queen, wondering what she's so afraid of. At that moment, Pride goes to him, telling him to go with her because she wants to give him something. She takes Stale to Albert, who tells him he made an exception for him, and he gives Stale an envelope. He opens it, and it is revealed to be a letter from his mother, who is happy that she can now exchange letters with him, wishing him well. Stale bursts into tears as Albert tells him that this was done at Pride's request. He goes on to reveal that his mother will receive a fixed amount every month, and they will accept one letter from his mother each month, but he can only send one letter each year. Pride hugs him, telling him they all love him, and he thinks about why Pride is so afraid of becoming a deplorable queen since she is such a good person. He becomes determined to protect her with his life, wanting to repay her kindness. Later, as Stale thinks about what he should write in his letter, he overhears people talking about Pride's selfishness, so he looks out the window but he can't see or hear them well. He uses his teleportation ability, hiding behind a bush. As he continues to eavesdrop, Stale sees Chancellor Gilbert with a group of men, and they start talking about him, saying he is a commoner who must feel ashamed because Pride is looking down on him. Stale knows this is a lie, and Gilbert appears to be spreading this to make them question Pride's eligibility to succeed to the throne. So he returns to his room planning to report him, but he thinks that they won't believe him as he is now. He knows that he will need more than just courage, thinking he needs to be craftier than anyone else to win even more trust than Gilbert has. He works on getting better, wanting to have an outer appearance that will be liked by the entire nation so that he will be able to protect Pride from the filthy adults. Stale is now loyal to her, and he will not allow anyone but Pride to become queen. Meanwhile, Rosa tells Tiara that she will meet Pride and Stale at her birthday celebration tomorrow, and she becomes nervous because she doesn't know if they will like her. The next day, the nobles gather for Tiara's birthday celebration, clapping their hands as Pride and Stale make their entrance. Stale introduces himself to Rosa, saying it's an honor to be a part of their family, as he promises to assist Pride as the next regent, gaining the admiration of the nobles. Albert and Tiara also make their entrance, and Pride remembers how Tiara is supposed to join her love interest to take her character out, serving as the only light for the country during her character's rule. The nobles think she looks just like Rosa, and at that moment, Pride starts to feel jealous because the nobles never said that about her. She agrees with them, finding Tiara cute. But despite feeling jealous, she is determined not to torment her. Albert introduces Tiara to her siblings, and Pride looks forward to getting to know her. Tiara is pleased to meet her, calling her big sister, and Pride finds her endearing, which is expected from the likable protagonist of the game. Stale also introduces himself, saying it's an honor to become her older brother, but Pride notices that he isn't addressing her as the princess. He wants to work with her to support Pride, and Tiara agrees to this. The nobles are happy to see this, as Pride realizes that Stale made his move to let the entire country know that she is the future queen. The siblings join hands, and Pride declares that they will protect the country and its people, making the nobles cheer for her as they clap their hands. Rosa tells Pride not to forget this moment, saying they have high expectations from her. Rosa informs everyone that Pride's precognition ability has blossomed, so she recognizes her as the next in line to the throne. After that, Gilbert goes to them, telling them they stole everyone's hearts. He compliments Tiara's appearance, saying it's a shame she didn't gain the precognition ability because she could have been the future queen instead, but Stale interrupts him, asking him what he means. Gilbert admits he was being rude, saying Stale has changed since he now looks like he's from the royal family. He wants to talk to Stale about his commoner background, but Stale tells him that he was able to come this far because of Pride, and he wants to continue serving her with Tiara as he displays passive-aggressive behavior. Gilbert asks Pride what she thinks about the politics of that country, asking her about the other people with the same ability, but Albert suddenly hits his head and drags him away. Pride thinks that Stale resembles Gilbert, which is a shock to him, and he falls into despair because he doesn't like Gilbert. Rosa and Albert talk about Pride, thinking she's changed a lot after she awakened her ability. Rosa reveals that she had bad premonitions about Pride, but she can no longer see them happening because of the changes to her. Rosa notes that only a month has passed since Stale joined the family, but she can't believe he is willing to go so far for Pride. The commander named Roderick approaches Pride, telling her he was deeply moved by her words, as he congratulates her for being recognized as the next in line to the throne. He wants her to meet his son in the future, and Pride looks forward to meeting him. Rosa says that the future has somehow changed, but Albert tells her not to worry because Pride will make a great queen. After the event, we see Pride outside, staring at the sky, as she swears that in 10 years she will do everything in her power to serve the country and its people. We see Stale training in the garden, but he gets embarrassed when he hears he will be marrying Pride. We learn it's common for adopted siblings to get married, but Stale ends up losing focus. The girls rush over to him, and Tiara treats his wounds. We learn that in the game, Stale actually develops feelings for her, so Pride wonders if that will also happen. She thinks about how her world has already changed so much, but she decides to test something to make sure. She fights against the instructor, and she manages to easily defeat him. We learn this is the first time she has ever picked up a sword, able to master self-defense by just watching, and she realizes she has the cheat abilities that make her the final boss. Stale can't believe she is so strong, thinking he won't be needed, but Pride tells him not to be discouraged, saying she is sure that he will one day become stronger than her. Stale gets back to his training, but after this test, Pride thinks her destiny is still to progress through the story of the game, but hopes to be able to spend her days with Stale and Tiara. Pride goes to observe the Royal Knights. She is greeted by Vice Captain Clark, but Pride wonders why the captain isn't around. She is told that the captain was called away for a joint military exercise with the neighbouring country. Stale thinks it's rude for the captain not to be around for Pride's first observation, but Pride is very understanding, saying she is sure that the knights will be outstanding even when the captain is away. Pride watches over the knights as they train, and she is thoroughly impressed by their skills, but she thinks about how her character used them all to do her bidding in the game. At that moment, a knight comes rushing over, informing Clark that the captain's group was attacked on their way to the neighbouring country. Clark thinks they need to get Pride to safety first, but she insists on overseeing the operation. They head to the conference room, where we see Captain Roderick reporting the situation. Stale notes that they are able to communicate thanks to the ability of one of the knights. We see that Roderick is surrounded, but he notes there haven't been any casualties yet. Clark tells him they have sent reinforcements, but they are still 30 minutes away. Roderick isn't sure they can hold up that long because they are already running low on ammunition. However, Pride has a plan. She reveals that Stale can teleport anything around his body weight as long as he has the coordinates, so she tells them to prepare supplies they can send. We see Stale sending over the supplies, and Roderick's men manage to regain their morale. The captain can't believe Stale kept such an ability hidden this whole time, and one of the knights suggests he could drop bombs on their enemies, but Roderick immediately reprimands him, calling him disrespectful. Stale says he doesn't mind if Pride told him to do it, but she tells him to never do something like that. Clark apologizes to his man, and Pride reminds them to keep Stale's ability secret, not wanting Stale to be used for war, but for him to use his ability for himself and to protect the things that he wants. A soldier reports that the reinforcements are 10 minutes away. Clark orders half of them to help Roderick, while the other half apprehends the enemy on the cliff top. Roderick warns them to watch their footing because the ground in the area is unstable. However, this makes Pride remember something from the game, as she suddenly warns them not to go up to the cliff top, saying she got a premonition that it would crumble. She uses her authority as the crown princess, ordering them all to retreat. The men rush off to send word, but we learn that Roderick is actually stuck near the cliff because his leg got caught by a falling boulder. He tries to cut off his own leg, but he fails because he actually has a slash nullification ability, which makes him immune to taking damage from swords. Roderick thinks it's the end for him, but his son suddenly appears saying he's a terrible father and telling him to survive for his mother's sake. Roderick gets surrounded by the enemy and he prepares to go down with a fight. Pride thinks there's nothing she can do, but she notices a certain man among the enemies. The men rush at him and he fights them off, but they realize that guns work on him, so they start shooting at him. His son falls to his knees, begging someone to save him, but Pride tells him not to worry, saying she will protect everyone in her country. She tells Stale to teleport her to the battlefield, but he thinks it's too dangerous. She tells him to believe in her, saying she'll be okay, and he teleports her away. The enemy is about to finish Roderick off, but they suddenly get shot at as Pride makes her entrance. She jumps down the cliff, telling them to prepare themselves, but Roderick tells her to get away. Pride claims he is one of her citizens, saying it's her duty to protect him as she rushes at the enemy. She starts taking them out, and Roderick can't believe she is really just an 11-year-old girl. 3 men charge at her, but she jumps over their attack, taking them all out. The men try to retreat, but she gets hold of a gun, shooting them up, and they think she's some kind of monster. The cliff starts to crumble, but Pride catches the man she saw earlier. She tells Roderick to grab onto the man, saying they'll all die if he doesn't use his ability. The cliff is about to crush them. We see a scene from the game where Roderick's son watches on as his father is killed. Clark orders the knights to look for survivors as he mourns Roderick's death, but Pride mocks the fallen captain, saying his death was pathetic. Clark tells her that Roderick sacrificed his life to help the others escape, but Pride thinks it doesn't matter because they still died in the end. She isn't bothered by the casualties, saying she can always recruit new knights, and she appoints Clark as the new captain. Roderick's son knows that Pride has foreseen the tragedy, but she just allowed everyone to die, so he becomes angry, thinking about getting revenge for his father. He knows that he won't be able to do anything as he is now, so he thinks about becoming a knight, just like his father, and he cuts his hair, determined to bring Pride to justice. Back in their world, the cliff falls on Pride and Roderick, and everyone starts to fear the worst, but a strange rock formation catches their attention. The formation crumbles as the other knights arrive, and they both make it out alive. The knights are overjoyed to see that their captain has survived, as Pride orders them to put their enemy in custody before attending to Roderick's injuries. The knights wonder who she is, so Roderick informs them that she is the princess, and everyone is shocked to hear this. In the conference room, they receive a report stating that there are 0 casualties, and this makes everyone happy, but Stale realizes that he just sent Pride to the battlefield, unable to do anything to protect her. Roderick tells Pride to return to the castle immediately, informing her that the vanguard is on its way to escort her back, but she tells him that he should return first to the castle because he's more wounded than her after hearing that Roderick lifts Pride and tells her that he will take her back. Like this, after which Pride asks him to put her down, as it will injure him more, but Roderick tells her that there is a mountain of things he would like to discuss with her, so he wants her to schedule a meeting. After hearing him say it like that, Pride thinks he might be upset with her when she suddenly notices that her skirt is torn and shoutingly tells everyone to not look at her, while also asking Roderick again to put her down as her legs are exposed. Roderick puts her down, and everyone laughs. Pride gets pissed and talks to herself in her mind that sure, she is just 11 years old with no sex appeal, but that doesn't mean she won't get embarrassed. After that, they return to the castle, and Pride has a meeting with the knights. She tells the knights to speak their minds, as she thanks them for keeping her involvement a secret. Roderick wonders how she found out that their enemy is a special ability user, and she claims that it's because of her precognition ability, but it was really because of her game knowledge. Roderick asks her why she joined the fight alone, saying she should have alerted the other knights before making a move. Pride explains that they wouldn't make it in time, and she tells them that because of the limitations of Stale stability, she was the only one who could rush to the scene. Roderick becomes upset, saying she shouldn't have entered the battlefield, even if no one could have saved him. He tells her that she should have just informed the knights and left everything to them, but she tells him about what could have happened if she hadn't interfered. Roderick interrupts her, reminding her that they are knights, so they will gladly give their lives for the country. He tells Pride that her actions almost disgraced the way of the knights, and she could have brought despair upon all of their countrymen if she died. She realizes that he has a good point, knowing he was seeking an honorable death, but she thinks about Roderick's son, knowing he would have been sad if his father died. Roderick goes on to lecture her about the value of her life, saying she is far more valuable than they are, so she shouldn't risk her life for them. Pride demands silence, admitting that he speaks the truth because her actions caused some trouble, but she tells Roderick that he wasn't the only one he rescued, saying she also saved the knights, who will soon be under his leadership. She states that those knights will save more people in the future because it's their duty to protect the people directly. She lectures the knights about the value of their lives, saying many people will die if there is no knight to protect them, so she implores them to forget about dying an honorable death and think about saving their countrymen instead. Pride tells Roderick that he doesn't understand the value of his life, telling him about the people around him who devote their hearts to him, so even if he was just a mere soldier, she would have done the same thing. Pride wants to save people whenever she can, as she reminds them about her position as the first princess, telling them that she lives for the sake of the people, so she will not allow any needless death. However, Pride knows that her actions have caused the knights some trouble, so she sincerely apologizes for this. Clark speaks up, saying he doesn't approve of the royal family getting involved in the incident, but he thanks her for saving the knights, and he bows before her as he thanks her for saving Roderick, knowing he would have died without her help. The other knights join Clark, thanking Pride for saving their captain, and Roderick's son walks closer, thanking her for saving his father. The boy reveals that he is a special ability user, but he thinks his ability doesn't do much, so he gave up on becoming a knight. However, when he saw his father's life on the line, he regretted not being able to do anything, so he wants to train harder, and he starts crying as he asks Pride if he can be a knight just like his father. Pride tells him that he can do it, saying he has her support because he has the kindness to weep for his family and the desire to get stronger. She wants him to protect everyone after he becomes a knight, and he holds onto her hands as he promises to protect her with his life. Pride asks for his name, and he reveals that his name is Arthur Roderick. She is surprised to hear this, as she realizes that the boy is actually a love interest in the game. She remembers that Arthur is the captain of the knights, and he is the only one who has the sword skills to overpower her character. Pride tells Arthur that she has foreseen his future, saying he is sure to become an honorable knight, but she remembers how evil her character is, so she orders him to kill her if she becomes an enemy of the country. Roderick suddenly frustrates himself, bursting into tears as he thanks Pride for saving his life. He admits that he is overjoyed to see everyone again, and he is happy to hear his son declare that he wants to become a knight, saying he is glad to be alive. Pride is also happy that he survived, but Arthur thinks about what she just said, wondering why she said that. He wants to protect her even if the whole world becomes her enemy, determined to make sure that she doesn't go down the wrong path. Arthur intends to cut down the people who stand in her way, and even if she starts to fall apart, he will do everything in his power to save her. We see that when Arthur was a child, he wanted to become a knight just like his father. But when he discovered his ability, which he uses to tend to his crops, and his parents are excited to learn he is also an ability user, he is pitied by other people because his ability was no good for being a knight. No matter how hard he tried to train his ability, it never changed, so he started thinking about being a farmer instead. But after meeting Pride, he has become determined to become a knight. He resumes his training with his father, and he asks to learn more about Pride. He goes in for the kill, but he ends up getting pushed away. However, Roderick is impressed by his technique, thinking he is even more talented than himself. His wife arrives, wondering what they are doing, and she is surprised to learn Arthur is trying to become a knight, but Roderick quickly runs off, saying he has business to attend to, leaving his sword behind. Pride wonders how Arthur is doing, and we see that, in the game, Roderick died at the cliff, causing Arthur to curse Pride for throwing his father's life away so easily and swearing to get revenge on her, but she's glad she was able to encourage him to become a knight. Pride visits the knights, telling Clark she has something to return to the captain. When the other knights hear that Pride is visiting, they all rush over to her, and she has become quite popular with them after the last mission. Roderick comes rushing over, and Pride notices he seems to have hurt his head. Clark points out they were drinking all night, and after training with Arthur in the morning, Roderick ended up having an accident. Pride is glad to hear Arthur already started his training, and Roderick tells her Arthur was asking about her. But at that moment, Arthur arrives, bringing Roderick his sword, and he gets embarrassed when he sees Pride. All the knights smile at him, but he prepares to leave. Clark knows he has something he wants to say to Pride, but Arthur says he will tell her after he becomes a knight. Before he can go, Stale invites him to join in on his training, saying he's in need of a training partner, and Arthur agrees. Stale shows him to their training room, but as Stale talks to him, he finds his smile suspicious, wondering what he is planning. Stale says there's no need to be formal with him, telling him to just think of him as a friend. They start their training, and Stale is surprised by Arthur's skill, wondering if he really took a break from his training, but Arthur claims he hasn't touched a sword in years. Stale tells him he should try out for the knights, which is a surprise for Arthur because he thinks he is just a beginner. He thinks it would take him at least 3 years to prepare, but Stale thinks he is ready, and he offers to support him in any way. Arthur wonders why he is trying so hard to make him a knight, and Stale says it's so that he can protect Pride. Even though Pride is strong, he worries she will continue to be reckless in the future. He is training for the purpose of protecting her, but he knows he isn't enough. He recognizes how strong Arthur will become, so he wants him to be the one to protect her. Arthur finds it strange, thinking he is just a noob, but as he thinks of Pride, he wants to be able to protect her. He wonders why Stale is trying so hard for Pride's sake, and Stale thinks they are similar, saying he owes everything to her, so he made a vow to live for her sake. He finds it hard to trust the people around them, but after seeing Arthur swear to protect her with his life, he started to believe in him. He wants to become Pride's shield, and he tells Arthur to become her sword. Arthur accepts his explanation, agreeing to work together for Pride's sake. They start to get along, and Arthur tells him his smile creeps him out. Stale is surprised to hear this, and Arthur says it was the reason he found him suspicious. They start messing around, and Stale is glad to have met him. So this is where the video ends, as the series isn't fully released yet, but if you want more recaps on this series in the future, just let me know in the comments section. Please also do subscribe to our channel Anitales Recap to motivate us. Adios.